Hi, and welcome back to Food Farms and Chefs. And I am so happy to introduce you to Derek Deke and Denmead, who is one of the co-founders and co-owners of Deke's Barbecue. Thank you for joining us on Food Farms and Chefs.
Well, thank you for having me.
No problem. And I know that you're a staple. I've seen you. I've gone to the Roxborough location. I've seen your food truck. I've eaten out of both. But I know that you have not just your new location in Germantown, you also have a new one that you're currently in. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your history on how you got into the business, and you know, we'll jump into what you offer too.
Sure. So I'm currently standing in our cloud kitchen setup, which is a new venture for us. Like I had said, it's our 1 month anniversary basically today, and we're down at West Philly, like the Mantua neighborhood, kind of between University City and the zoo. And it's a facility with 29 2 to 300 square foot kitchen stalls, and everything is via delivery app and kiosk order. And there's about 15 of us operating in here right now. And so we called this Deke's Barbecue Express and started with kind of a slightly different menu. Our barbecue staples are on it. Certainly our ribs and our barbecue wings and our pulled pork sandwiches and our barbecue cheesesteaks. But we launched some of the stuff that's been really popular on our food truck over the years since we launched our food truck. It's been 6 years ago. So we do a really good burger, and we do some homemade chicken nuggets and a fried fish platter. So we've added that to the menu here also, and it's going good. So it's working some kinks out, but it's fun.
I'm sure it is. And I'm sure that Gene also has, indulged in some of your cheesesteaks along with some of the other items that you have. I know I certainly have. And one of my favorite things that I get when I'm there is your brisket cheesesteak.
Oh, thank you. Now I'm not originally from Philadelphia. I'm 52 years old. I was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, but I came out here in 1989 as a freshman in college, and I've spent most of my adult life in Philadelphia. So I get to a traditionalist. There's no such thing as a brisket cheesesteak. A cheesesteak is a cheesesteak. It's barbecue beef on a roll with cheese sauce, but we called it a brisket cheesesteak, and it works real good. So we love it.
Let's clarify this. Yes, to our traditionalists, and I'm one of them. You're
Yes.
right. There's no such thing as a brisket cheesesteak. But I will tell you what, I will take that brisket cheesesteak 7 days out of the week over top of the vegan cheesesteak. Okay. So
the vegan.
there are things that that's a little foul, and then there's foul. Okay. Brisket cheesesteak. Okay, not necessarily for the purest at heart,
right?
But it's not really a foul. You know what? They go across the river in Camden at Donkey's Place, and they say, "Well, that's not a cheesesteak because it's served on
a round roll."
Right. Okay, let's stop. It's a cheesesteak. A brisket cheesesteak is a great cheesesteak, and yours is absolutely worth trying. If you're a cheesesteak purist and shaking your head, you have no idea what you're missing.
Well, I appreciate that, Gene. Thanks. We were about 5 years ago, right when we launched our food truck. So we've been in business since 2010, and we got our food truck in 2017 and added that to our portfolio, if you will. And we didn't start with the brisket cheesesteak in 2010, but I was, like I had said, here's beef, here's a great Italian roll, and I make homemade cheese sauce from scratch every day for our mac and cheese, our shells and cheese. And so I put some on a Philly roll with some brisket and grilled onions and gave it some staff. And they were like, you got to start selling this right now. So we did. So.
And I'll also mention the fact that like you and your wife, you're self-taught pit masters, correct?
Yes. I've never, so we've worked in the food industry every single job you could have. Me primarily in kitchens, but I spent plenty of time behind a bar and waiting tables also. But we met in the event planning industry. And so when I wasn't in a kitchen, in a professional kitchen, I was just always cooking, and was, in and around food every day of my life, really, for the last 25 years, or more. So yeah, barbecue food. I was in the Teach for America program after I graduated from college. This is 1993, and I was placed in rural Georgia, where I taught 7th grade and coached varsity baseball. And I certainly saw my share of barbecue pork, Brunswick stew, cornbread. It's a different cornbread down there. It's not nearly as sweet. Collard greens. And it really, I was really, when I was in my early 20s, starting in college is really when I started to think about, a culinary future. And that shaped a lot of what I do today, my 2 years in Georgia in the mid 90s. So self-taught. Yeah. So I just, it's at the end of the day, barbecue, it's very similar to braising. It's low and slow cooking. You're using tougher cuts of meat, that you have to raise the internal temperature up to a sweet spot just below around 200 degrees, where you would never ever do that with, strip steak or, beef tenderloin, etc. And once you learn, there's a bunch of different ways to do it, whether it's over direct heat or indirect heat. You just trial and error, and then we launched our product in the fall of 2010. I had helped I found a gentleman in South Jersey, down near like Malaga, that was converting old home heating oil barrels into barbecue pits. And somebody had told me about them. My wife's from Margate, so it's kind of on the way. And I had heard about it. I had actually seen one like on one of the causeways going into like Margate, and kind of pried around and found out who was building them and met him. And we designed one together, and I opened my first Deke's Barbecue up in Roxborough in the fall of 2010 with that restored home heating oil barrel. And we started running out of food within a few months. It wasn't nearly big enough to keep up. So,
So you've definitely expanded for sure.
yes.
And I know
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I know that I pass by in frequently in Germantown, that area. I pass by Attic Brewing, and you're kind of associated with them. So
yes, right next door.
And so I mean, what goes better, and I'm sure Gina will agree with me on this one, but I don't know anything better than like beef, barbecue, and beer.
There you go.
What a great combo, right?
Yeah.
We could throw in a little bourbon. It would be a great trifecta there.
That's right.
To go with that. And they do actually, if you think about the science of it all and what they are, beer can have such a wonderful richness with it that complements the barbecue. You get a little bit of spiciness in the barbecue as well. I mean, from just a food science perspective, as you were talking about the science of barbecue, and what you left out there is that taking a fillet and a sirloin and throwing it on the grill, we would never do that, but that's really fast food. Barbecue is love. It takes time. It takes care. Yeah, I mean, throwing that fillet or that strip steak on the grill, that's McDonald's. I mean, that's fast food. It's just more.
I haven't seen a fillet tip sandwich at McDonald's yet, but that would be interesting.
Yeah, it's much more expensive, but it really is fast food. It's convenient. There's not a lot that's put into it. Whereas barbecue is something that takes a lot of time, a lot of love. You have to take a look at that piece of meat. You have to break it down and say, well, look at the cartilage here. Look at the, connective tissue. We're going to take this slow. We're going to marinate it with this. We're going to give it some flavor this way. And that's what makes barbecue, I think, so special. And the same goes with great beer making. As a person who is a barbecue person and a brewer, I get that. They go well together. They
Yep.
both require time, effort, they require nurturing, they require tasting through the process.
And bourbon too, like you said.
Yep.
I
Yep.
mean, the reason bourbon is, they both have Southern traditions, they both have American traditions. And what's key to the science of bourbon and barbecue is the wood component, the sugars and the nitrates. That's what's making the moonshine brown in a barrel. And that's what's adding that flavor. It's that same component that's adding that very distinct flavor, if it's done right, to barbecue. That's what's giving you the bark on the outside. And Gene, you're spot on about the time component. It takes us a minimum of 2 days to get brisket onto a plate. So we receive it, and we use a grass-fed product. It's not necessarily local, but it's a grass-fed product. It's very tender. We love it. And once we receive it, we break it down and trim it, like you said. Then we season it and let it sit for at least 24 hours, seasoned, and then we barbecue it for 12 to 14 hours. So, if I get brisket on Thursday, it's hard to get it to you on Friday. We can certainly get it to you on Saturday. So you constantly have to be anticipating and planning and managing your inventory and all of that. And that's the hardest part once you start growing.
And it really is, truly a labor of love. The sad thing is your brisket, with all the work that goes into it, is still half the selling price of a fillet that is, a much easier product. I mean, it's a butchering process. You're probably getting it already sliced into a 6 or 8 ounce portion. You're throwing it on a grill, and you have so much more love and work into your product.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Now, I love having been in the catering and event planning business for about 10 years. I love my sliced filet with béarnaise. Don't get me wrong. So, but we've gone full on barbecue for sure. We've spent most of the time talking about brisket, and I really appreciate it. But having lived in Georgia for those couple of years, we started with all the meats. We're not necessarily a barbecue region here in Philadelphia. There's certainly a rib tradition in Philadelphia that's interesting, and Atlantic City too. But we, because we're not necessarily a region, I was like, okay, well, let's just kind of mimic the different regions. So our brisket, we try and slice pencil thick, like Lockhart style Texas, Smitty's Market down there in Blacks, which I've been to a couple times. We dry rub our chicken, kind of Memphis style. Same with our baby back ribs, but we serve them lightly sauced. We do our spare rib St. Louis style, where you cut. So a St. Louis style spare rib, you cut the sternum plate off, and it gives you more of a kind of a symmetrical rectangle, which cooks a little bit more evenly. And then you can use that cut off piece to make rib tips, which we do sometimes. But then my go-to barbecue, what I really started with, the barbecue that I fell in love with was, it's called Lexington style, or Piedmont style, which is the foothills of Western North Carolina. So you're talking about Lexington, North Carolina, Winston-Salem, Hickory. If you were Andy Griffith fans, it's kind of that neck of the woods. Literally, like, coming out of the Appalachian Mountains into the Piedmont area of North Carolina. And they do a very distinct type of pork shoulder barbecue with a ketchup-based vinegar sauce. And I really started our business back in 2010 with that style of barbecue on a Philly slider roll, on a Morabito's slider roll, an Italian roll bakery up in Norristown. They make great little dinner rolls. And so I put that chopped pork down there. We call it pulled pork. Down there, it's chopped pork. So I put that style of pork on that Morabito's dinner roll with a little bit of my Lexington sauce or ketchup-based vinegar sauce with some slaw. Down there, they do mostly red slaw, so it's not doesn't have mayonnaise in it. Up here, they preferred my white slaw. You put slaw on it. I made my own pickles, put that on the slider, and you had a pulled pork slider, and that is what built our business. That sandwich, 13 years ago. And now it's, people, we don't sell as much pork as we used to be honest. So now we just put that pork on a sweet potato roll from, you had mentioned Attic Brewery, another neighbor of ours a block away is Merzbacher's, a great bakery. Pete Merzbacher, 2 blocks away. He makes a fantastic sweet potato roll. It's a play on, the Dutch style Lancaster County potato roll. And he makes one with sweet potatoes. So we put our pulled pork on that sweet potato roll with the slaw and the pickle on the side. We encourage everybody to put it on the sandwich. So.
Well, that acid goes so well with that, that little crunch that, just what a great combination. You're describing that here, and my mouth is watering, and I'm like, oh, do I get in the car and drive now? And, okay, and do all this. It's a wonderful combination. And I love that style of barbecue. You talk about flavors, and obviously a great deal of research that you've put in. And when I say research, I don't mean sitting in a textbook. I mean getting out and trying food.
Yeah, I've been in the pit room and at Lexington Barbecue, and it cooks in Lexington. So Lexington is the name of a little town. It's the name of one of the barbecue joints that does that style of barbecue, which they call Lexington style barbecue. So I've been in a couple pit rooms. The owner of Lexington Barbecue is a guy named Monk. He went by the Monk. I drove down to visit him, and had made arrangements and got caught in heavy traffic trying to get down there like on Labor Day weekend on a Saturday, and they close at like 9. They're in the Bible Belt. They're not open on Sunday. I got there at like 9:10 and it was empty. So I just showed up the next morning, knocked on the door, and he was in there. And on Sunday morning, 9 in the morning, and we had about 20 cups of coffee and talked barbecue for about 3 hours. So
oh, wow.
It was an incredible experience.
Well, that is absolutely wonderful. And for anybody who wants to show up and enjoy some of that experience that you've gained over the years, where can they find you online and in person?
So online, the easiest way is dekesbarbecue.com. And you can reach me via email at info@dekes. Goes to either me or my wife, Jackie. We haven't spent nearly enough time talking about. There's no Dekes Barbecue unless there's my wife, Jackie. She runs the ship. So that email reaches both of us, and we respond to them all. We do a catering business out of our food truck or just delivery, but we will staff it on site where we're both working. One of us or both of us are working. We're happy to schedule any kind of private dinner, bourbon tasting, anything you want to do. The best way to reach us is via that website, dekesbarbecue.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Food Farms and Chefs.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
Great.
you, my man. Take care.
You got it.
All right. And we will be right back after this short break. Hi, and welcome back to Food Farms and Chefs. And I am very happy to introduce all of you to Samuel Kennedy, who's one of the co-founders of Culinary Harvest and Berwyn Farmers Market. Samuel, welcome to Food Farms and Chefs.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's honestly, it's an honor to have you. I know you and your partner both graduated from the Culinary Institute of America, so your pedigree starts out just already from the get-go with something amazing.
Oh, thank you.
But so for our listeners, what got you, what was your inspiration to go into the culinary industry?
So me specifically, my inspiration was honestly the Galloping Gourmet. So growing up as an 80s kid, we didn't have that many TV channels, and PBS just happened to be on, and the Galloping Gourmet just happened to be next to Sesame Street. And so that's kind of my first experience with wanting to become a chef. And then honestly, the moment I saw the Culinary Institute of America's campus when touring colleges, I just fell in love. And so I just kind of, I applied to two other schools, both culinary schools that were around, at that early aughts kind of time period. But Culinary Institute of America, once I got in, there was definitely no other choice for me.
Well, I have to say that yourself and Jean have a history both because I believe you also teach there now, right?
No, I don't teach for that's so that's my $100,000 email address. So
Oh,
yeah, that's the permanent email address that you get when you graduate from the Culinary Institute of America. So I've kind of taken it upon myself to use it at all times.
okay. Well, I mean that works. It's just, I mean, and it definitely gives you a little bit of a heads up because I was like, oh, I think he actually teaches there.
Yeah.
But through researching you, I think I also saw that you're a cheesemaker.
Yes. Yes, I've been making cheese in the Chester County Mid-Atlantic region for about 15 years now, actually.
Oh wow. Now I can tell you first for from my firsthand perspective that Gene and some of his friends get together and buy a bunch of cheese. So maybe that'll be a fun ad for Gene.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, he's probably had some of cheeses that I've either created or had a hand in creating. So
Well, I think what Amaris is referring to is every year, and we're getting ready to shortly, we do a very large wholesale cheese buy where we kind of do it like the stock market. You buy a share, or you buy a full share, you buy a half a share, and then for that amount of money, we get a 1 day kind of deal with one of the big cheese people in the city of Philadelphia, where he gives us wholesale pricing, and we buy it, and then we process it all, and have a wonderful, everybody gets X amount of cheeses, and you probably get this year it's 150, you probably get about $325 worth of cheeses for about $150.
I
So
love it.
yeah.
I love it. Needs to become a trend. I mean, you gotta write plans for this and put it on on Instagram and you know.
Or I maybe the next thing is to do a summer one where we go out to Berwyn Farmers Market and start to get some cheeses from the Chester County producers, because there are so many out there that are producing such great cheese. The one thing, if I could make one wish come true in this region, it would be for people to understand and recognize the amazing amount of talented cheesemakers that exist from like Hunterton and Jersey down to Chester County, and how many, great cheeses are being produced locally that people are just not even understanding or taking the time to experience.
I fully agree.
Now, pulling off of that, because obviously you're going to bring some yourself, your own cheeses into the farmers market. What? Because we did bring you on to talk about the Berwyn farmers market and for you to talk about culinary harvest. So, what are they, and what can people expect when they visit you?
Yeah, so Culinary Harvest was originally created with the philosophy of being the cheerleaders for locally made products, artisanally made products, and then locally farmed ingredients. It started during COVID when Carlo's big pizza business down at the Man Center and at the I guess that was the BB&T Center at that moment in time went kind of went stagnant because of COVID, and we weren't sure what group entertainment was going to look like anymore. On my end, cheese sales went stagnant.
Mm.
We relied on and prided ourselves on working with small businesses and small restaurants and mom and pop cheese shops to sell all our products. And so once everything kind of shut down, there was kind of this culinary mindset that set in, and we're trying to predict what the future was going to be. And Culinary Harvest was created to kind of help guide that future, to kind of put some eyes on what this area has, as far as locally made goods are considered. And so we started online with a curbside pickup system. And then once everything kind of opened up, after COVID was gone, we decided to morph that into a management company. And so we've become a management company, and we've really pride ourselves on tasting everything that we bring into the farmers market, as well as loving the products, wanting our children to eat those products, wanting our children to be to thrive on those products, in this new environment. And so that's kind of what you should be expecting. You should be expecting to get everything you would need during your farmers market trip, for your week's worth of groceries, and then just have to kind of make a few stops here and there for those essentials, toilet paper, paper towels, stuff like that. But it's really kind of the goal is to just bring great local food to that mainline area, which we thought was kind of lacking during those COVID years and then after.
Yeah. And I know that because you actually have had or have even just this week upcoming, you have some of the amazing local vendors that are, offering just organic and fresh and just nutrient rich foods at the market.
Yes.
And we've had some of them on, like Spotted Horse Provisions is one of them. Yeah, and Fishtown Pickles Project. Like I love Nikki. I love both of their different businesses. And I saw that you have a local apiary there too. So, along with the fact that you're, creating this place for the main line to go to pick up what they need on a weekly basis, you're also kind of educating the communities as to what is out there and available.
Yes. Yes. And that's, that kind of falls on that cheerleader side of it. One of the reasons why I got into the local food system, back in the first recession back in 2008 of my lifetime, I was to become the best buyer for a restaurant. I knew farm to table was coming around. I knew that it was going to be a next big hit kind of niche market, for U.S. restaurants and the U.S. market.
Yeah.
And so with that, I got into cheese making at that point in time. And so it's just been a great experience. And I've loved the relationships I've built. It's like a family. Me and my wife actually moved up to Martha's Vineyard for a year, and we moved back just because we missed that local market mentality, that farm family that we had worked so hard to kind of find during our 20s.
I mean, it's having a family and incorporating like growing that family just from the connections that you make is an important aspect of what you're doing.
Mhm.
So
It is very much so.
yeah. Um
So two of the things that you obviously have a lot of with the apiary there and your place and that wonderful combination of honey and cheese. Tell me and our listeners a little bit about your cheese making style. What really motivated you to get started in that, because it's not like I wake up one day and I'm going to start making cheese today. And where that whole transition to where it is right now today.
Yeah. So, when I originally started, cheese making was kind of in its infancy in the US. On the artisan side, you probably, maybe had 30 producers, 35, 40 producers at that time that were small producers like we are here at Birchrun Hills Farm. And so, it was, I had did a 1 month trip out to California with the Culinary Institute of America. It was part of my bachelor's degree section of my education. And so at that point in time, I did a stage with a gentleman called Ig Vela and Vela Cheese. Vela Cheese is a iconic cheese brand in the US, in California especially. And then, some of his products still live on today, even though unfortunately he is not with us anymore. And that kind of created a lot of the passion that drove it. I've always been into the artisan side of culinary arts, doing fermented meats and charcuterie and whole muscle fermentations, lactic fermentations with vegetables, and then even, just the side of beer and wine and alcohol, which are all fermentations as well. So, it was a kind of a natural extension of all that work that I had been doing in my past histories. And then, like I was saying, in 2008, just happened to lose my job. I was working for, corporate America in the chef's world, very large organization. And so when that happened, I decided, you know what, I'm going to become the best buyer for a small restaurant I can be. And that in turn brought me to farmers markets. And so I started selling food, selling cheese at farmers markets. And I just wanted to know who was growing what, who was making what, and how can I incorporate that into my world. And I just stumbled into cheese, and I just happened to be really, really good at making it, honestly. And I've had a lot of success with cheese making. It's brought me around the world. I've won local recognition, national recognition, international recognition with some of the cheese brands that I've managed and helped develop. And it's grown into this beautiful passion that I really don't see myself doing anything else in my professional life, other than truly, being a cheerleader of local products and making cheese.
Well, so for our listeners, because not everyone knows the Birchrun Mill and what you do, but one of the things that you do is one of the just great value, great price, but one of the most delicious blue cheeses I've ever had. I adore it when I can find it. I get it. But talk a little bit about the diversity, because you're not just a blue cheese maker. You have a great cheddar as well. You add a little touch to that with the habanero. But talk to our listeners a little bit about what cheeses you do produce.
Of course, yeah. So, at Birchrun Hills Farm, that's owned by the Miller family. So it's a family dairy farm. They're first generation. So, their first year on the land, and then they have their two sons, both graduates of Cornell University, that are going to be the next generation that farm this land here. But Sue Miller created that Birchrun Blue back when she first started making cheese in the mid 2000s. And I'm just the steward of that cheese at the moment. I'm just I just help kind of open up the other opportunities that are available with other cheese styles, like the new Valence style that we're producing, a little lactic style cow's milk cheese that's made into a pyramid with an ash covered rind. uh you know my specialties are washed curd cheeses, so your Goudas. That's kind of what I was known for before I arrived here at Birchrun Hills Farm, when I was at the farm at Doe Run, with St. Malachi and Seven Sisters. And then, it's a very interesting business model on the East Coast as far as cheesemakers are concerned. In the Midwest and especially Wisconsin, a cheesemaker doesn't usually produce outside of a family of cheeses per se. So, all your equipment becomes specialized when you start talking about scalability. But on the East Coast, and where, all those Midwest cheesemakers dream of having the East Coast market. We're just lucky enough to be here and, boots on the ground with those markets. And so, the East Coast demands variety, especially in the farmers market environment. They want the cheesemaker to have a range of cheeses, everything from mozzarella to fromage blancs to cheddars to blue cheeses to little washed rinds to fresh fermented milks to, and so you kind of got to narrow that view in just to kind of hit the economies of scale when it comes to cheese. But here at Birchrun, our goal is to produce really high quality cheese using minimal inputs, from happy animals made from happy cheesemakers, and sold to, this beautiful market that is the Philadelphia region.
And I mean,
Well,
oh, sorry.
Yeah, and you do that very successfully. Amaris, take it away.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I'm a lover of cheese. I mean, if if there's a number one thing that when I go out and buy something, it's got to be cheese or something that's dairy related. That is 100% my love. So
It's my love too. So I think if we all just keep promoting it, then we'll all be much happier individuals, because cheese does equal happiness. It really does.
it really does. Now, in the last minute that we have left, since you have so much, under your wing, let our listeners know where they can find you, where they can find the cheese, where they can find Berwyn Farmers Market, where they can find Culinary Harvest.
Yeah. So first and foremost, the Berwyn Farmers Market's in the Handle parking lot along Route 30 in the main line of Philadelphia. So we're about 45 minutes outside of Philadelphia, but right there on Route 30. On Sundays from 10 to 1 is when the farmers market runs. I believe we have one more market for the winter, for December, and then we'll regroup and release our January, February market schedules here in the next couple of days. And then we also have our stand at the Yuletide event, which is at the Devon Horse Show Complex. So you can always catch, Carlo or I at that event right now. That's now Monday or Wednesday. I think it's running every day, Wednesday up to Christmas now. So definitely come see us out there and kind of, you can taste some cheeses. We have raclette going with the Fat Cat made from Birchrun Hills Farm here. We have little charcuterie boards, but then we also have a nice selection of some vendors that are from the Berwyn Farmers Market. So you can put a gift basket together. You can, just bring your favorite product home, or even find a nice little treat for your four-legged friend in the house. And then, for Birchrun Hill cheese, we deal with small mom and pop shops. We deal with, local restaurants, a few distributors, but yeah, definitely, if you don't see us in your cheese case, then you can just ask. That's always the easiest way to get us into a cheese case is, when the cheesemonger knows there's a market and there's somebody willing to purchase, then they'll be calling us, no problem. So if you don't have it there, just ask.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sam, for joining us on Food Farms and Chefs.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we will be back every single week with a new episode and great guests. So tune in every single week to Food Farms and Chefs.
Have a great day.
You too.